Hello and welcome, ambitious English learners, to our premium advanced conversation space. This is the podcast where we elevate your linguistic proficiency while equipping you with the intellectual frameworks to transform your reality. I am your host, Caspian.
And I am Alara. We are absolutely delighted you have chosen to invest your precious cognitive bandwidth with us today. We know you have infinite options for entertainment, but you chose growth. That in itself speaks volumes about your character. Today, we are tackling the most profound question in human psychology. Why do some individuals completely reinvent themselves while others remain perpetually stagnant, imprisoned by their own circumstances?
That is the existential question, Alara. It is the chasm between potential and actualization. We often look at high achievers and attribute their success to luck, privilege, or innate genius. But having studied behavioral science extensively, I can assure you, transformation is not a mystical event. It is a predictable, systematic process that operates on specific psychological and neurological laws.
I am so glad you mentioned the neurological aspect, Caspian, because that demystifies the process. For instance, when I was grappling with learning a new skill, I initially felt overwhelmed. It felt like climbing Everest in flip-flops, but I discovered that the brain is not fixed, it is highly plastic. This concept of neuroplasticity means that our neural pathways physically rewire themselves in response to repeated behavior.
Precisely. Your brain is like a dense forest. The pathways you use frequently become well-trodden superhighways. The ones you neglect become overgrown and eventually disappear. So when people say, "I'm just not a language person," or "I'm inherently lazy," they're reinforcing those superhighways. But if you consciously choose to practice a new habit, even for a few minutes daily, you are physically hacking your neurological architecture.
That is a powerful and empowering premise. So let's address the elephant in the room. If transformation is neurologically possible, why do so many people fail? Why do New Year's resolutions crumble by February?
Because they attempt to conquer the entire mountain in a single leap. They rely on motivation, which is an emotional state, rather than on systems, which are mechanical. But before we prescribe the cure, let's diagnose the illness. What are the primary psychological barriers that keep people shackled to mediocrity?
Excellent question. First and foremost is the paralyzing fear of failure. People are terrified of the judgment attached to falling short. They ask, what if I try and crash spectacularly? But they fail to consider the inverse. What if I try and soar? The reality is that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a fundamental component of it. Every breakthrough is preceded by a series of breakdowns.
And closely tied to that is a profound lack of direction. Many individuals are like ships without rudders, tossed about by the currents of life. They know they want a better life, but that abstraction is too nebulous. Without specific, measurable micro-targets, the brain cannot mobilize its resources effectively. You wouldn't start a road trip without an address. Why would you start a life transformation without one?
And let's not ignore the insidious nature of negative self-talk, the internal monologue that whispers, "I'm not smart enough," or "I'll never master this," or "It's too late for me." That is the voice of the fixed mindset, this belief that our capabilities are static. It is a psychological trap that prevents people from even attempting the first step.
Finally, one of the most seductive traps is waiting for the perfect moment. We procrastinate believing we need more information, more confidence, or more resources before we act. But here's a universal law of human behavior. Motivation does not precede action. Action precedes motivation. You do not wait for the feeling of confidence to lift weights. You lift the weights and the confidence follows.
That is a profound distinction, and it perfectly bridges us to the antidote, the power of infinitesimal, consistent improvements. Have you ever encountered the concept of the aggregation of marginal gains?
Yes, the 1% rule. The philosophy that if you improve by just 1% every single day, you are not just 365% better at the end of the year, you are exponentially better because of compound interest. In fact, mathematically, a 1% daily improvement results in a 37-fold increase over a year. It's the mathematical law of compounding applied to human behavior.
That ties directly into the philosophy of James Clear's atomic habits. It posits that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. If you want to read more, don't set a goal to read a book, set a system to read 1 page per day. This lowers the friction to entry so much that your brain cannot logically refuse.
I have a powerful real-world example. A friend of mine who worked as a taxi driver wanted to become fluent in English. He was exhausted at the end of each day, so he didn't have the energy for intense grammar drills. Instead, he committed to listening to just one English podcast episode every day during his commute. That was his 1%. After 2 years, he had accumulated over 700 hours of auditory immersion. He didn't just become fluent, he started thinking in English. It wasn't a dramatic overhaul, it was a relentless accumulation of small, consistent efforts.
That is deeply inspiring. So the practical takeaway is pick one microscopic behavior today. It could be writing a single sentence in a journal, doing 2 push-ups, or reading a paragraph of an English article. But here's the crucial nuance. While these actions are vital, they're built upon a deeper substratum, our mindset.
Absolutely. Let's delve into the neurology of mindset. The fixed mindset is the belief that your intelligence and talents are predetermined. The growth mindset is the belief that they can be developed through dedication and hard work. This is not just self-help fluff, it's scientifically validated. When you adopt a growth mindset, you approach challenges with fervor rather than dread, and you view failure as a data point, not a life sentence.
And inherent to this is the power of the reticular activating system, or RAS. The RAS is a bundle of neurons at the base of your brain that acts as a filter for all the sensory data bombarding you. If you tell yourself, "I am improving," your RAS will suddenly start noticing all the small pieces of evidence that support that narrative. If you tell yourself, "I'm a failure," it will filter for evidence of failure. You effectively become what you continuously focus on.
We can actively reprogram this filter through deliberate neuroassociative conditioning. This includes affirmations, positive present tense statements that rewire your neural pathways. Not just "I will be fluent," but "I am becoming fluent in English." And visualization, mentally rehearsing a successful scenario. The brain cannot easily distinguish between vividly imagined reality and actual reality. So visualization primes your neural circuits for the action itself.
And never underestimate the cognitive power of gratitude practice. Shifting your focus to what is already abundant in your life, health, a supportive friend, a roof over your head, elevates your emotional baseline. When you are in a state of gratitude, your brain's prefrontal cortex becomes more active, which enhances your creativity and problem-solving abilities. It shifts you from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
These mental frameworks are the bedrock. But, Alara, I want to address another critical external factor that often sabotages even the most determined individuals: the environment, specifically the socio-environmental matrix we exist within.
That is crucial. There's a famous aphorism, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." This isn't just poetic, it's statistical fact. If you surround yourself with cynics who complain about the world and laugh at ambition, their cognitive inertia will drag you down into their vortex of mediocrity. Conversely, if you engage with ambitious, optimistic, and disciplined individuals, their positive energy becomes a catalytic force.
It is the principle of social contagion. Habits are highly transferable. If your peer group values fitness, you will likely adopt healthier behaviors. If they value learning, you will read more. So I challenge our listeners to audit their social circle. Are the 5 people you spend the most time with lifting you higher or anchoring you lower? If it is the latter, you have to curate your social environment. This might mean joining online communities of English learners, attending workshops, or even just consuming content from inspirational figures.
That audit also applies to your digital diet. The content you consume, the news, social media feeds, and entertainment, is programming your subconscious. Are you feeding your mind with information that empowers you or triggers anxiety and fear? We must be the guardians of our own attention.
Precisely. To conclude our deep analysis, we must synthesize these layers. Transformation requires a three-pronged approach. First, the mechanical layer, the micro habits and systems. Second, the mental layer, the growth mindset and cognitive reframing. And third, the environmental layer, curating your physical and social space.
I think to maximize the impact of this episode, we should crystallize the vocabulary we have infused into our discussion. We have used some sophisticated terms that deserve a precise definition, so our listeners can wield them with confidence.
An excellent proposition. Let's begin with neuroplasticity. This is the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Example, embracing neuroplasticity means I can always learn new skills regardless of my age.
Next, we have the aggregation of marginal gains. This is the philosophy of making tiny incremental improvements in any area, which accumulate to create massive change. Example, my fluency is not the result of one intense class, but the aggregation of marginal gains from daily listening.
We discussed cognitive inertia, the resistance to change in mental processes. It is the tendency to stick to familiar habits simply because they are comfortable. Example, breaking the cognitive inertia of scrolling on my phone was the first step to reclaiming my productivity.
There's also socio-environmental matrix. This refers to the complex web of social and environmental influences that shape your behavior and beliefs. Example, I upgraded my socio-environmental matrix by joining a mastermind group of ambitious entrepreneurs.
We used the term fixed mindset, the belief that intelligence and talent are static traits, and the opposite, growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed. Example, transitioning from a fixed to a growth mindset transformed how I handle criticism.
We also mentioned the RAS, the reticular activating system, the brain's natural filter that determines what we notice. Example, I used my RAS to my advantage by programming my mind to notice learning opportunities everywhere.
We used neuroassociative conditioning, the process of linking a strong emotion or sensory experience to a specific thought or behavior to rewire neural pathways. Example, I used neuroassociative conditioning to link the feeling of pride with my morning workout.
And scarcity versus abundance mindset. Scarcity sees limited resources. Abundance sees endless opportunities. Example, adopting an abundance mindset helped me feel inspired by other success rather than threatened by it.
So, to our dear learner, here is your synthesized call to action. Do not attempt a revolution. Attempt an evolution. Pick one aspect of your life where you want to grow, perhaps your English, and identify the smallest possible action. A 60-second shadowing practice, a single line of journaling. That's your atomic habit.
Then examine your self-talk. If you catch yourself saying, I can't, correct it to, I am learning. This is your cognitive reframe. Finally, identify the primary source of negativity in your environment, a draining relationship or a toxic social media feed, and reduce your exposure to it.
Remember, you are not in a race with anyone else. You are in a race with the person you were yesterday. Progress is the ultimate metric.
We have an incredible PDF resource for you today, available for free download via the link in the description. It contains the full transcript of this advanced conversation, the vocabulary list with nuanced definitions, and a practical worksheet to help you design your own transformation plan.
If this episode resonated with you, please demonstrate your support by subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing this with a friend who might need that extra push. Your engagement helps us continue providing this level of depth.
This is Caspian and Alara signing off. The power to rewrite your narrative lies within your hands and your habits. Don't wait for the right time. Create it. We'll see you in the next episode.
Take care of your mind, take care of your habits, and never stop investing in yourself. Goodbye for now.